Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in today. We've got a bit of an extra bonus episode this week with Dominic Phipps, who is the MD at Brand Recruitment and an absolute legend of a man. Dominic has been supported with the Marketing Meetup since day dot. I think I've waxed lyrical about them for a long, long time. And given the current context of the news right now, where we're seeing literally thousands of people being laid off from their jobs at any one point, then it felt pertinent and right as we're heading into what is also going to be a predicted recession to revisit the CV and what folks can be doing to make their CV really stand out in an industry which jobs will be hard to come by at certain points. And so with this thought, then we thought we'd get Dominic along and as an individual who sees literally thousands of CVs to come in and share some thoughts on where CVs have their place in the current market and going forwards, but then hopefully also some tips for how you can optimize your CV to make it really stand out in the industry. So Dominic, mate, it's a pleasure. I feel like, you know, we've been doing this Marketing Meetup thing forever, so it's so lovely to be sharing this with you. Thank you for taking the time. So I know that there's a bit of a debate about CVs just in general right now. And so where do you stand on CVs today in 2022 heading into 2023?
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, thank you very much for the introduction. That's the legend element was exaggerated as per usual. So yeah, I mean, in short, the CV side of things, we'll jump straight into it. I think it's probably wise. So obviously, there's been a hell of a lot of debate recently about whether CVs are even needed. You know, so looking at LinkedIn profiles instead, or looking at I suppose other more background, check elements rather than purely the paper-based CV of old. So, I mean, one thing I would definitely say is that the CV certainly still has its place in the job search world. I think it inherently, especially with the changing tech, changing times, changing roles. Let's look at how marketing roles have changed vastly over the course of the last 5 years, let alone 15 years. So I think, as with everything, CVs will have to adapt. The way that we're presenting ourselves has to adapt, and in short, the way that we position ourselves as candidates for roles, it will always be on the basis of the interpreted perception of the reader. We've got to really remember that. It's all based on opinion, and everybody's got 100%. An opinion. I mean, one thing I would definitely say, especially on the CV side, it's very, very easy to get drawn into writing the exact right CV, and in short, there's various guides. We can all give guidance and info and bits and pieces on how to build a CV, how to best present yourselves. But I think, honestly, a lot of it does come down to personal preference and, your feeling toward your own skill set, how you want to position yourself. It's very, very easy to get sucked into, I need to tick every box, for instance. But we're probably all sat there now thinking, well, actually, if I am ticking every single box, am I proficient in every box I'm ticking? So there's that honesty element there, which is probably quite important. I think. So, yeah.
It's a really, really great point, because I think, the tendency will be for so many folks to say, yeah, I'm good for this job, or I want this job, and therefore you mold yourself around what you read on the job description. But of course, as individuals, we're each going to bring our strengths and weaknesses to our respective roles. And even though you may not be the perfect individual, I'm pretty sure that if I got a CV through, which literally just ticked all the boxes that I'd written down on the job description, I'd be a little bit disappointed in a way, because I'd be like, I want to know about you. I don't want you to be I don't want you to be what I want you to be. I want you to be you in a useful role, if that makes sense. Is that like a regular mindset that you get from folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, occasionally you can, we as recruiters and obviously our clients, they, consistently tell us that we need people to tick every box. That's the whole point of us supplying candidate profiles, candidate CVs. But you are so right. In order to tick every box, you may then become definitely an anomaly in the sense that, the majority of roles are placed, or, people are getting roles all the time where they are ticking 60 or 70% of the boxes, sometimes even less, very honestly, especially if there's a role which really, it needs somebody with a certain personality or culture fit that, that job specs just can't account for. It's possibly the best way to put it. So, hey, look, the point of a CV is it's an initial impression, isn't it? It's an initial impression. It's a door opener. So to a degree, it's got to serve as that, and a bit of a checklist exercise, but absolutely don't put pressure on yourself to tick absolutely every single box. Just, long term, that may not work out.
It's not what people are looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
I love that. And so, sorry, Dom. I was just going to jump in because you mentioned in your first answer, you mentioned how CVs have changed in the past 5 years, and I wanted to jump in here because one example is stuff like creative CVs and stuff like that. So I was just curious on your reflections on how they have changed, because I love what you've just said there about them being like a snapshot of you as a person. They're there to give an initial impression, to open the door. But how have they changed over these past 5 years in significant or indeed notable ways that you've realised when you're seeing so many?
Yep. Creativity. That's the blessing of a word that is creativity. And I think, to be fair, I think the way that people, are presenting themselves now, honestly, it feels people are presenting themselves in a much more realistic and personable way, which is lovely to see. It really is. So when I first started in the industry, so marketing recruitment, I've been doing marketing recruitment for 12 years. So if you hark back to 12 years ago, we were consistently asking candidates for, when they were sending through their CVs, could you send through a Word version of your CV and your profile? And that was due to tech issues at our end, in terms of, and this is the thing, agencies and also, clients and employers, they had, archaic ATS systems that, they didn't pick up PDFs, for instance, and now we're sat here with tech that, can pick up on animated CVs and, videos which are embedded within CVs as well. We're seeing more and more creative-based CVs, which is great. And I think, again, it's down to personal preference. And this is the beauty of the CV debate, in a sense. There's always this debate about whether I should submit a creative-based CV or a more, a figures-based CV or a text-based CV. I think a lot of it does come down to role, in all honesty. You'll find typically that, let's say there's a graphic designer position. Imagine receiving through a completely bog standard text-based CV with nothing wacky or no imagery and things like that on that. I think that would probably be to the detriment of the application, really, because you want people to be invested in their craft. So graphic designers, you'll find that full of creativity, colours, pictures, graphics, animations, bits and pieces like that. Fantastic. You will tend to find that, CVs of a more analytical role. So let's say we're looking at marketing analysts or even digital people. Very honestly, digital people have almost been trained to have the eye of, analytics and looking at figures and metrics and things like that. So in some ways, it's not a bad thing that actually the CVs then represent that, because of the fact that, that's what the employers will be looking for. They're looking for that presentation of figures, awareness of the reasons why they're putting out campaigns, return rates, open rates, click-throughs, and things like that. So likewise, more senior CVs, and we'll talk about this in a minute in terms of the profiling and running through some template, CVs just as a bit of an overview. It gets to that crux point where senior CVs need to have that, that loftiness or the gravitas somewhat to represent them correctly in a senior leadership position, with overarching control over management, ROI, budget, strategy, and so on like that. So naturally, those CVs will probably seem a little bit more text-based and, more standard to the eye, but, in terms of the content, much more deep when it comes to the leadership qualities. So, yeah, it's a kettle of fish, which is a great one as well. When you look at CVs coming through, you still get the buzz when you do see somebody's CV come through and it just looks great. And obviously our audience now, we're all all involved in marketing and have been for years, most probably. The amount of times I've heard from clients of ours saying that, if a marketer can't put together a good CV, from the off, that tends to be a qualifier, either in or out. So it's super important.
Interesting.
But equally,
interesting. That's fascinating.
It's very much about our own interpretation of how we want to craft the CVs and things like that. So, yeah.
I love that. That's really, really cool. Even that insight. So I take a couple of things from that. So the first is, it feels like an obvious point, but actually until you made it, I hadn't really thought about it, which is, different roles of CVs are going to have different sort of purposes almost. They need to show different things. That's a really, really great point. And then secondly, I wasn't even aware that the technology had moved on. So I remember the days of sending through a Word document, doing the PDF that thought I look beautiful, and then sending through a Word document and feeling really disappointed about it. So it's really cool to know that you got the technology to be able to look at these things now. I really like that. That's a great tip in itself. And so I know that you've got some templates that you could speak through now with some tips on what folks can look out for when they're creating CVs and editing them. So I'll give you the stage and say,
thanks,
if you can speak through that would be great.
I mean, in short, basically what we're looking at is, I think it's really important to not divide it up by role, but we'll divide it up by seniority, because this is where maybe the differentiation comes in terms of the way that people should be presenting themselves in some way. So just open the screen share on it. And then what we will do, so we'll just jump into that first template. So this is the in short, we've labeled it as an entry or exec level CV template. So obviously the purpose of this is to introduce yourself. Obviously you've got name here, LinkedIn link. It's always advisable to have a LinkedIn link in there, and the reason being is, obviously people can have photos and things like that, but it really is about the humanizing nature of a CV. When looking through a CV, it's very, very easy just to get drawn into just purely the text. Whereas having a LinkedIn link in there, it does humanize you as a candidate. As long as all the information is correct and, it tallies up alongside the CV, I would absolutely say go for it in terms of putting in a link to your LinkedIn there, or any other socials you think as being particularly prudent, really. So, introduction. So we all know what an introduction is. However, I think with a CV, it's really important to be doing a qualifier really, really early, or as early as we can, really. So we're looking at credentials for people. So, for instance, it might be something along the lines of a marketing executive with X amount years worth of experience, a CIM qualified marketing executive with X amount years worth of experience, degree educated and so on like that. But it's a bit of a qualifier element where we need to be talking about our credentials very, very early on. This does serve as a bit of a kind of, a tick box exercise. But very honestly, the very early stages of any CV reviewing process is exactly that. It comes through as a tick box exercise. We are looking for certain things on the candidate profile, on the candidate CV, which means that we can qualify in or qualify out on the basis of various different elements. So the introduction as well, this is obviously really, it's interchangeable. And this is the good thing about this element of the CV. I do always advise people that if they are, looking at a specific role of, specific nature, or there's a particular, let's say, a brand manager position, brand manager roles, they're a really good one to reference because of the fact that it's probably got lots of background connotations to do with brand management. There's lots to talk about there, probably more of a, coming from a consumer background. So within your introduction, you can lead on there from saying that you're a seasoned brand manager, CIM qualified, having worked on a number of household brands. Feel free just to note down the household brands within the introduction. It's a hook. Think of it as a hook in terms of, how can I get the attention of the reader? And it's a little bit like when marketing campaigns are going out. We've got to hook people in pretty early to ensure that they read through the rest of the content or the document or something similar. So we'll move down into the job title and company name element. The reason why we're jumping straight into this one is just because if we've done our introduction correctly, the reader should want to qualify you in pretty quickly on the basis of whether you match the kind of industry, the industry specialism, or if they're not looking for any industry specialism, whether they can qualify you in terms of job title. I would always say put your job title first. The reason being is, let's say you're going forward for a marketing manager position, for instance, and you're currently a marketing executive or senior marketing executive or something similar. Again, it's an instant qualifier on the basis that you may have done a slightly more junior position than the one that you're going for moving forward. So it creates that relevance and feeling of a step forward, along the same linear path. That's probably the best way to put it. Bullet points. I know some people absolutely hate doing bullet points, but the beauty of bullet points, again, we've got to be thinking, if I am the reader, what am I looking for? And if I'm the reader and I really have to dig for what I'm looking for, is the purpose of the CV really doing, what it needs to, in a sense, So, but I would always say bullet points are a really good way of getting to a point. That's the whole point of a bullet point. We're looking at something quite definitive. We're looking for, a qualifier, a reason to progress you within the rest of the interview. The rest of the CV review. I would always say as well, obviously depending on your seniority, and we'll go on to that in a moment, but it's just important to put a bit of variety in if at all possible, within your roles. So when you're doing the job title element here, company name, dates, and a brief summary of the company, when you go into actually writing the elements of your role, try to be as broad as you can without over-egging the pudding. Obviously, if you're involved in SEO and PPC and you're purely based on, your role's based on traffic driving, getting people to the sites and so on like that, don't note down everything to do with broad marketing positions if that's not telling the true tale of what you're all about. Again, we've got to be honest, and that is for our own benefit as well as people within the application process. Just going back a little bit in terms of the brief summary of company, obviously we put that there. The reason why we'd always recommend putting a brief summary of the company, and we're talking literally a sentence. So it might be, brief summary of the company, a global leading software as a service business, servicing the construction industry. or the property industry or something similar. Leading household brand name within food or something similar. Again, obviously you're familiar with the name of the company you've been working for, or at least you'd hope so, but the reader may not be. And the brief summary, again, it does allow people to get that instant link, and understand the reasons why you might be applying for the role which you are. So any which way you can give them information on that, fantastic. As we're on the entry or exec level CV, I would just say, again, keep it linear. So we've got one job title here. You want to move on to the next role that you've done here, and then if needs be, the next, for instance. Education, degree title, university, and dates and things like that. I would also put in any kind of extracurricular elements to your education, which you have been involved in. Put it into this part as well, because it is really, really handy. So, for instance, if you were part of an athletics union within your university studies, or you were, peer support or something along those lines, again, it's just adding to the credentials that you are a team player, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously you've got the interests, bits and pieces like that. Again, this is just about humanizing you. There's lots of different things that people put in there: motorsport, yada, 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 the gym, walking the dog. Obviously, it's completely down to you what you put in there in terms of interest. But again, it is just about humanizing you and taking you from that paper-based CV element to becoming somebody who they can envisage working within their team with others, potentially with similar interests. Pets is always a very good one. So if you've got, hopefully you're dog people, hopefully, but if you've got pets, walking the dog, for instance, I enjoy going back to my cat, for instance. In some ways it should strike a chord with the reader of some description, again, if they've got pets. So portfolio links, I would say at the back end, and the reason why I say portfolio links is a good thing to do is just because sometimes, again, if your CV has been piled into multiple other CVs, they'll want a differentiator. And actually portfolio links are really good at showcasing your experience a little bit more, really, and giving a real good snapshot of actually what you've done within your marketing, PR, comms, or copywriter work. Copywriters, actually, just one quick thing to note, copywriters probably hate me for saying this. Typically, you will find that copy and content people, their CVs tend to be really quite brief. And actually, having looked at CVs from copywriters and content people for the last 12 years, I would definitely say they are in the bracket of people who go into less detail on their CVs than anybody else. And you'd think that was probably the difference. You would think that actually, well, copy and content people should be doing really amazing CVs. That's what they're doing in terms of the content they're coming out with. But actually, a lot of the lean then comes through on their portfolios, and copy and content people, if they've got copy and content portfolios, that's where they're really, really showcasing the skills and experience, really, on that side of things. So it's a bit of an overview in terms of what the CV should look like. We'll hop straight into the second one. Don't worry, we'll rush through this just to make sure we're just getting the clarity for those particular points and the reasons why these differ, I suppose, in terms of the level. So obviously we've covered entry and exec. This is more of a managerial level CV template, really. So again, name, LinkedIn link, humanizing, everything like that. Introduction. So this is the introduction for this person will probably need to be a little bit different in the sense that it needs to qualify them in as a manager, or at least somebody who's got an element of leadership to do with their skills. I would really include, kind of team management here, if at all possible. So the number of people you've managed, or, budget management. I've managed a budget of X amount. I've managed marketing campaigns from initial conception through to implementation and reporting. Write that in there. The level of management and what you've done, both on a hands-on element and also in terms of man management experience, that's really handy. Again, credentials, CIMs, MBAs. It's really impressive when you see, I've attended Mark Ritson's MBA, and it's a really nice little thing to be seeing on a CV, because again, it just shows that the marketing people, PR comms people, we are all trying to further our skills, our learning within our craft, and again, anything you can put in there to do with those credentials, that's fantastic. So we've added in an extra box here, and this is key skills. The reason why we would suggest doing a key skills box for a managerial role is just because by this time you've probably tailored your role or your experience a little bit further than maybe what the last entry level CV should show. Really, you found yourself, as it were, within your marketing craft. So I would say here, key skills, again, bullet points or something similar, but I would try and add in, let's go with an even number. Nobody likes odd number on bullet points, but so 8, 10 key skills, bullet point. But these key skills, I think it's really important for you to lead on the skills or the elements of marketing which you really enjoy. Again, this is just about making sure that the person who's reading your CV is picking you up for the right reasons. If you absolutely love digital marketing, SEO, PPC, email marketing, analytics, looking at metric, what we need to be doing is trying to build a bit of an MO and a bit of a background that leads on from your introduction. And now we're looking at the tick box exercise in terms of the skills, which we're looking for in terms of the CV review. Again, we then move on to the job title, company name, dates, brief summary of company. I think it's also, again, if you've managed a team, it's really, really handy then to put in the number of people you've managed really, really early on. Again, it's just to make sure that the reader can apply your skills and your experience to their current situation. So if the current team which they're having to be managed is 5 people and you've managed a team of 4, fantastic. It shows a step for you in terms of managing more people, and also it shows that you've managed multiple people previously before. If you've not managed people, that's really not an issue at all. But what I would do here in terms of the management of the team side of things, maybe do something along the lines of complete management within a standalone position. And you could almost merge the brief summary of the company and also the management of the team or management of your role for it to become a brief introduction of your role and its context within the business. Reference to growth and ROI. So when we're looking at growth at the managerial level, it's really important to be starting to focus in on what you have contributed and what you have built, within your role, managing the team or managing marketing itself. Anything that you can do in terms of figures, ROI. I took social media following from, we use Joe as an example. I took social media from 200 followers at one point to 55,000 followers. You want to be writing in there the real plugging, points, the reasons why somebody should be considering you for that role. And again, I would say sales figures as well. At this point, in terms of the managerial level roles, the reviewer will be looking at applying your skills and experience on the basis of what they can get from you. As much as we don't want to think about marketing as being, ROI based all of the time, there is certainly that element of, still that we, within the marketing space, we have to justify, our budget of $500,000, bringing in $1 million or something similar, or, so really, really think about your wins, your personal wins, what you've been involved in, what you've led, what you've strategized on as well. I think that's really, really super important. Moving down the CV, it's exactly the same structure then for the rest of the CV for the entry and exec level. In terms of length of CV, I was going to cover this at the very end, but so entry and exec, 1 to 2 pages, absolutely fine. If you want to do 3 pages, that is also fine. It's completely up to you. Please do not listen to people saying that, you need to have a CV which is 2 pages long. You don't. It needs to be what you are comfortable with and what truly represents your skills and your experience. So yeah, managerial roles, typically, it will be 2 to 3, possibly 4 pages at a push on the basis of skills and experience. If you do feel like you're over egging the pudding somewhat, this is really pertinent for the senior level role as well. You can, on your final page or where you want to start cutting it off, start batching your roles together. So if it's roles from 10 years ago, typically, very honestly, the reader of the CV will only really look at your first 2 or 3 positions. They really won't go back much further than that in terms of clarity surrounding what skills you can bring to the position. Of course, unless you're a contractor and freelancer, but we can cover that towards the back end. Senior level, so we'll whistle through this because it's obvious, I think. So at the senior level, again, same setup. Introduction. We really need to be pushing on the words surrounding, the reasons why we're in that top table role. What we've been doing in terms of a leadership perspective, that might be, building a team. I took a team from 3 people to 15 over the course of 3 years. Or I led on new marketing initiatives, first of all, on a UK level and then across the group. We need to be looking at things which, again, really promote our skills and experience for the reader so they can apply, well, actually, Joe has been doing this so far. Can Joe do this for me? Actually, okay, we're starting to see the reasons why I should continue to read Joe's CV. So leadership, budget management, super important. Budget management, strategy, and proven ROI. We'll cover budget and strategy together just super quick now. So budget and strategy, just mention just small elements of, what sort of budgets you've handled. Again, it qualifies you in, qualifies you out potentially. And then also the building of strategy. So if you have built strategy and you have guided, the top table on strategy and you've guided a company through, if there's an acquisition, you've taken the brand and you've reenacted it as a group business and so on like that. Sing those songs at the top of the CV in terms of introduction. Team size, growth, leadership credentials. I would say here a little bit like the last one. We're looking at the size of team that you have been managing previously before, the growth of the business, how that business has transformed since you took up your spot as at the top table, and in that top leadership marketing role. And then leadership credentials. Leadership credentials, I think actually this is your opportunity to really say what you love about leadership and the reason why you want to remain in a leadership position, if that is indeed what you want to do. If you want to move forward into another leadership position with a bigger team, just mention the reason why you enjoy managing people, mentoring people, and growing those teams and functions. And then finally, we're then just heading back into the same setup as the managerial level. The thing to really mention about this element is just this part of it is just a little bit more. It's a bit more beefy. It's a bit chunkier, and it's a bit more of a story. I mean, bearing in mind that if your CV is being reviewed, you would hope that the reader has dedicated some time, especially at the senior level, to really consider the profile and to make sure it's of the right caliber and level. So do put some effort into this element of the CV. Finally, we're moving down. Obviously, this is 3 or 4 pages for a leadership position in reality. Portfolio links, you can put them in if you want to. It may not be expected that at this level that you have portfolio links, because chances are you may not be quite as hands-on as what you were previously before. So that's fine. But likewise, if you do want to include those, then that's fine from previous roles. Some candidates as well at the moment, and within the application process, they're attaching recommendations received, any links to blogs or content and things like that. I think it's a really good idea, and again, that's something which we're sort of suggesting more on our senior search side of things. We can also embed videos at this element. So we as Joe obviously mentioned the technology element. We have got a platform which allows a video interview to be carried out for 2 or 3 minutes, just as an introduction to you as a candidate, and then it's embedded within the CV, which is really sharp. Actually, it's a really, really good piece of tech and software. So yeah, that's the CV templates pieces. So I'll stop sharing now. So I'm hoping Joe's still there. So there we go. Are you still there, Joe?
I am indeed, dude. I'm still here. That was so useful, mate. Really, really, really useful. Like, there was a bunch there that I'm like, if I was looking right now, then I'd be changing my CV on the basis of what you've shared. And it's not even just like, here's the format, but just those little bits that sort of almost come in between those little sort of like off the cuff remarks, which are really, 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 really useful. So I hope it's been good for folks listening in, because I've certainly enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
It's a minefield which can be navigated. That's the thing. So it's an enjoyable minefield once you get through it and you get to the end result. So yeah,
that's it. Bang on. I want to close out just by asking you about a couple of questions about getting in touch with recruitment professionals, both in-house and recruiters, professional recruiters working for recruitment firms. So I remember in my previous role that the HR team, that they welcomed the initiative of folks who were getting in touch with them to do something a little bit special. But they also said, we built this process for a reason. We'd sort of asked for a CV and a cover letter and stuff like that for a reason. So if you wouldn't mind, please going through the process, that would be really useful. How useful is it for folks to try and get in touch with recruiting managers on LinkedIn, to find their email addresses, to send gifts and cakes or whatever it is, with these folks, beyond the CV and the cover letter that we so often accept as the norm?
Yeah, sure. There is an element of how long's a piece of string with this answer. Obviously, again, it purely depends on a lot of the time the mindset of the receiver, the mindset of the person who and their current situation to do with their recruitment process, how far along the process they are, as well, how busy they are in terms of the volume of positions which they're handling. I mean, bearing in mind that so we're talking about in-house roles here. So HR professionals, I'm pretty sure most HR professionals won't mind me saying this as well. Obviously, this may be foot in mouth syndrome for me now, considering my position, but many HR professionals are really overworked. They are really overworked with both managing the HR side, so general business operations, but then also having the bolt-on of the recruitment process. Yes, indeed, you are so right. Businesses do put in place certain processes to streamline and make sure everything is as smooth as possible. Chances are they're doing that twofold. One reason they're putting the process in place is to make it as easy as possible for the HR professional to manage, but then also the second element is to make sure that the hiring manager is to a degree protected against candidate volume. It's a double-edged sword, what I'm just about to say here, but the application process itself in its initial timeline. So when we're talking about, hey, I want to go and apply for a job, how easy is it for me to do that? It's become almost too easy to apply for a role. In all honesty, that's my opinion. There's now something called one-click apply, and it allows you to click on an application. You don't even need to populate any details anymore. You have your CV loaded in, and you can just press apply. Unfortunately, for many people who are genuine candidates, they get lost in the massive swathe of people who have just one-click supply, who have seen the salary bracket, or seen the location, or seen a very small element of that role. And unfortunately, they are completely irrelevant for that position. Again, double-edged sword. It may be that the job advert it hasn't been written correctly. And that's where the buck needs to stop with the recruiter. In that sense, if they are receiving too many applications for a role, chances are they haven't taken the care to qualify people in sufficiently enough when they are writing their job advert. But likewise, there is also, because of that one-click apply function, it does then mean that the volume of applications coming through for roles, even though the market is really candidate-led at the moment, we and also clients, we're still receiving just the same amount, if not double, triple the amount of applications for roles. In terms of the direct approach, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's a really good idea. But I think it needs to be targeted. Obviously, we're in marketing. We need to know who we're looking at, who's the customer, who wants to buy. So we need to figure out who the best person is to drop a quick note through to. I would always say, if you are doing a direct approach and you are approaching a company directly, just make sure you target the person who's going to be most interested and the person who has that need. An HR person may not have that need. Obviously, they need to fill the role, but it sounds awful. They will probably need to fill the role irrespective of who gets the role, as long as they've got the skills, and the hiring manager is happy. As an HR professional working in-house, a message is great, but at the same time, they've probably been bound by their own processes and they can't deviate from that. So if it was a marketing manager for a role, for instance, I'd be messaging the head of marketing to say, "Hi, Pam. I've just applied for the marketing manager position. It looks fantastic. You might see that I've got experience within this industry already, or I've got skills of managing a similar sized team. I love what you guys are doing, especially this." Mention something about a recent article which they wrote. They love that, the specific nature. Think of it as an ABM thing. We're looking at account-based marketing. To that one person, create that MO, get that hook, and that sort of thing. You could even attach your CV to that LinkedIn message as well, if needed. But yes, it's just about the relevance. And unfortunately, we have to dodge the LinkedIn function that has happened, where even the messaging now can be generated, auto-generated. So it's just about that specific kind of way of doing that. So the tech is killing us, Joe. The tech is killing us all.
I think one of. But I think actually, it's interesting to almost finish on that point, because the thing that came through in all of the analysis of the CV and how to do it well was the word that you kept using was humanizing. And actually what we're trying to describe here is giving a quick snapshot of, yes, I'm going to be competent for this role. And everything you've described so far feels like such a lovely demonstration of how you can very neatly do that. But actually the purpose of all of this goes back to the tech is killing us. So this humanization of you as an individual actually is the thing that stands you apart. And that feels like a quite reassuring message in a way, that if one can embrace yourself and truly be a good fit for the role, not just any job, then actually chances are, this isn't a guarantee. Of course it never is. But if that's the attitude that you're entering, that feels a healthy and productive place to start from. So, dude, I think that may well be our time as well. So that was really, really brilliant. I really appreciate you walking us through that. I mean, I know that Brand is in a really busy place, so to get time in your schedule like we have today is unbelievable. So I know that the community will appreciate it as well. So thank you for taking the time, and everyone will appreciate it. So thanks, mate.
No problem. Amazing.